Good evening, everyone. My name is Slav Baranovsky. I'm the founder of Allegiant Club, international speaker, presenter, uh, mentor at How Founders Lab London, and host and presenter today of our second session called How to Find a Co-Founder in relation to our upcoming book project called How to Build a Tech Startup from Concept to Market. Today we speak about very important question: how and where to find a co-founder, how to validate your teamwork, how to make sure that actually you can work together with some people you met and you can develop some project together. So that's very important question, and especially important for those who just about to start building the venture. And today we will have many discussions with our experts today, so thank you very much for joining us. And in the meantime, we make a broadcast during YouTube and like LinkedIn Live, so if you get any question, feel free to ask. And yeah, so that's the topic. And now I would like to invite our first guest today, the Marco Poliafrica mentor at Intelligent Club, our frequent guest during our sessions. And today I would like, first of all, to ask Mark to introduce yourself and to give us a few words about your background, your experience. And equally, the first question of the evening we have today: where to find a co-founder? What would you like to share on that point? So Mark, good evening. I see you already, so yeah, welcome.
Hi, hi, Slava. Hi, Slava. Thanks for inviting me. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
First of all, cool, cool. So, as I was saying, thanks for having me, and good evening or good afternoon to good morning to all the audience, depending on where you connect from tonight. In terms of myself, say something about myself. I'm a clean tech sustainability professional, so I work in the corporate and nowadays in project finance for the development of renewable energy assets with a very large company. But also, I translated my MBA studies and the experience that I got from the corporate world into the passion for mentoring and supporting startups. So I collaborate with a lot of accelerators. I mentor startups. I deliver training, and I invited coaching and public speaking events, of course, like this one. And I enjoy seeing these wonderful ideas growing into something that is important for them because it's their creation, but also important for the society around them. But of course, founders cannot do that alone. They need a team. So of course, there are a lot of questions around. Oh, how can I make a good team, or how can I avoid making a bad one? And I will focus on the difference between the two. So I think that as a start, I would say that the team is the most important asset. People think that the money is the most important asset, and yes, I appreciate it. Money is an enabler, enable us to do what we want or to buy um, things that we like. And of course, if people say money is not useful, no, wait a moment. Maybe you don't know where to do shopping if you think that it's not useful. But okay, money is important. But once we have money, we need also to understand and reflect on the real important asset, which is the team, people, our team. They are important for at least a couple of reasons. First of all, because we cannot do all on our own. It's difficult. It would be enough to look at these events behind the scene. You see at the moment myself, you see Slava, but behind there is an excellent team of people who tirelessly work to deliver and develop these events. And I think this applies to anything in life. We cannot do it alone. So we need a team for it. But also, there is a second reason because a business requires a lot of skills, and we cannot really think to be a know-all who knows everything: marketing, legal, HR, strategy, technical and product development. So we need the team, and I think that is the first important message. Now, where do we find a co-founder? Should I use one word? Along the way. Along the way means that you need to find the right people, and quality, as in my opinion and as I saw with many startups working in these years, is much more important than quantity or how quickly we find people and co-founders, people our team. I typically say that finding a co-founder is like dating. You need to understand them. You need to appreciate, and you need to make sure that you are able and willing to work with them, that you click with them, that you enjoy spending time with them. So, when we have our events and when I collaborate with Accelerator, I every now and then, well, quite often actually, I see this chats on the side and say, "Hey, I'm creating this idea. I look for a co-founder. Do you want to join me?" That's not maybe the best way to find somebody, or at least it's a very effective way. So that's a way, networking at events. But it might not be the best way to make sure that the quality is high enough. So we say, take your time, be patient, talk with people, pitch, present your ideas, network, um, join accelerators where you can actually brainstorm with many other people, and you will meet them along the way. That is the meaning that I give to this sentence.
Thank you, Mark. Just a little add-on, because we discussed here that you pretty much can meet your potential co-founder anywhere from some entrepreneurial events like this session in particular, or some accelerator programs. But do you have any advice in particular how to filter, your potential candidates when you see them first time? How to understand that it's some kind of space to discuss further, to give some next step in your first meeting. Would you recommend to have some very short 15-second speech to the people you meet, or would you ask some particular questions how to define that actually that person in potential may be a good choice? Do you have any advice on that when you see someone around some particular activity or event?
Yeah, thank you, Slava. I would like to ask a question to this fantastic audience of entrepreneurs. Say that if you want, you look for a partner, and you're a party. So you meet a girl, a person, a man. It doesn't matter really. You meet somebody. Would you go there and you say, "Hey, would you marry me?" I don't think this is the best approach. Now, this is like in normal life. We need to know each other. So I think it's good if you want to present your idea. I personally wouldn't just force the audience or the person that I'm talking with. I wouldn't force them just to 15 sales pitch with everything there, just and the classical question at the end. So, do you have money for me? I wouldn't go there, but definitely we also know that there is a form of pitch which is the elevator pitch, or an introduction pitch, and that is very much suitable for networking events. That is what I would use. So presenting my idea, presenting what I want to do, presenting my aim, but that is only the first stage. Then, what I would do actually, I will listen. I will listen. I will let them talk because I want to understand who they are, what values they believe in, what they want to do, what is their aim in life. you know um, many challenges come along the way. It's not easy to find out. It is exactly like when we want to date somebody. At the beginning everything is beautiful, everything is beautiful. But then you start finding actually some weaknesses, and you say, oh, actually it was not as perfect as I was hoping for. So the same thing applies to searching for a co-founder. It's great to have something to do a very short pitch. It's great to have a sort of very organic, informal introduction, but then I would go on the listening side. I would let them talk. I would try to understand. I would ask questions, but in a very organic way. It doesn't need to be like, a police station type interview. So that is what I would do. Very organic, listening and having something to say. It's very important to have something to say, but it needs to convey clarity. You need to be the first who describes your idea in a clear way. Think about me if I said, "Hey, look, no, Ed, you wouldn't understand what I talk about." So, first, be clear about your idea. Second, listen to them. That is my advice for you.
Thank you very much, Marco, for your contribution and your start of our session. Now, I would like to invite the Vadim Grinevich, also our special expert today, to share his opinion on where to find a co-founder. But there is another question I believe Vadim can contribute to, because some entrepreneurs think, do you really need a co-founder? Maybe you should be a solo entrepreneur. So my question to Vadim, how to define if some startup founders, they really need to find someone to join the team, or they can just go as a solo entrepreneurs? What would you advise on that?
Thank you, Slava. It's a pleasure to join your session for the second day in a row. I'm Vadim Grinevich. I'm professor of entrepreneurship and innovation at Wolverhampton Business School. Just to iterate for those who have joined us today, Wolverhampton University is a university of opportunity. We are very proud of our record or in social mobility. We are proud helping students from disadvantaged communities. We are proud helping them to move in their professional career. So your question is, very good question, and I should say, yeah, whether you should go as a sole entrepreneur or whether you should start with a co-founder. And if you look at entrepreneurship research, for a long time, I think the common the consensus was that it's probably a recipe for failure if you go as a sole entrepreneur. It means you may not have enough expertise. It means you have to deal alone with all stress and pressure. It could also be an indication that you are unable to convince anybody else, even your closest friends, that your idea is very good. So, and you can find a lot of argument, that you have to have a founder. However, if you look at the large scale data, there is also very interesting research analyzing data of startups who were successful in raising funds. And what is interesting is that more than 50% of successful startups successful in raising funding were having just a single founder. So it's not essential. It's not that clear cut. Sometimes actually you can convert disadvantages to advantages, and sometimes at the initial stage of your enterprise, it might be too time consuming, too much effort you may need to invest in order to convince something to follow your idea, and it may not be it may take time, it may take effort, and I cannot again agree more with Marco. If there is a co-founder somewhere, they will emerge on the way. So this would be my answer. So it's very much individual situation. From my experiences with students, however, I should say I can see more student enterprises starting with co-founders, and this is probably what you would expect in a student environment. So you can meet a peer from another department, from another school, which could be also good fit from the functional point of view of your enterprise. So one person may have an engineering background, and another person could have a good training in enterprise and management skills.
Much, Vadim. I completely agree with you about that particular advice about the skills you kind of need to find in a founder if you aim to find one. So maybe do you have any your reflection on what kind of skills do you need to be a founder, first of all, as of a startup, but equally what skills to look for in your co-founders, because you definitely don't want to duplicate your skills, but what skills can be, must have in your startup team. Do you have any advice on that, especially as you see many students developing their ventures during the university life? Maybe you can observe and give advice to students as well.
As a founder, I would say you have to have a passion for enterprise. You obviously need to have a knowledge. You and that knowledge could be technical knowledge, could be related to science, it could be related to social sciences. So again, for a long time, we have thought that it is science, is engineering, which matter when starting a business. This is not entirely the case. So sometimes your skill as a founder, as a owner, is in putting different bits and pieces of the puzzle together. So I really, this is what I'm trying in my everyday teaching life and when I'm working with you, just to raise the level of confidence among non-engineering students when it comes to starting a tech startup. And with co-founders, I guess you have to find someone who shares your vision, your values. In my view, personality comes first. So you have to find the person who understands you well, who listens you well, um, who can challenge you as well. And you need to have a lot of trust in each other. You have to be understanding. You have to have a respect to each other. I think these are basic, probably qualities which we are expecting from anyone when we are working together. And you expect person who can commit as well. So personal qualities, in my view, come first, and then expertise.
Thank you very much, Vadim, for your start of that discussion. And now I would like to ask Marka, because Marka, you work a lot with startup founders, and definitely if you're looking for some particular skills, it's not something coming with your birth. You also can develop particular skills to become stronger in terms of building up your startup. So, what would you advise regarding building up the right set of skills across your team, and maybe you have your own approach on how to help startups on that?
Well, in terms of developing the skills that are needed, I think it very much depends on the different people, and that is because each of us has a different learning style. So, for example, admittedly, I'm a bit more academic. I like to learn from books. I like to learn the theory and then apply the theory. But there are people who actually are exactly the opposite. They don't like the book. They don't like the conceptualization. They prefer to have an hands-on experience and learn by doing. Uh, I would say both of them are legitimate, fair, and equally good systems. Of course, you need the practice. You can never replace the practice. But when it comes to learning, I think it's important to adapt to our own style. That's why I think there is not a generic rules. Typically, when we brainstorm and when we grow as a startup, we start having people to talk with. We have accelerators, we have mentors, and all those people start giving us inputs, feedback. But then whether a seminar works better than a book, whether a book works better than practical facing the challenge, that is really up to us. One thing that I would like to add about the learning experience is that far too often we keep repeating that and understand where we come from when we talk with that language that, hey, we failed. And so now we have to do it again. Actually, that is the most important thing. regardless of the way we learn, regardless of which tool we use and we leverage on, I think that we should change the paradigm here, the paradigm of the what we call failure. And in fact, my strong advice is that we should start embracing the failure as the best way to learn. I'm not saying that we have to try to fail on purpose. On the contrary, we try to make things work. But the failure in itself is the most informative way to learn, is the most data rich experience that we have. If we think about that, if we know how to digest the failure, that is a wonderful way to learn what did not go well, what where we made a mistake, and what can we improve. And the failure typically cannot happen on a book. It happens in real life. So these are my two main messages. The first one, where to develop our skills and how to learn, that really depends on each of us. There are tests, there are psychology tests, there are you might find online, and you can look for example, you can Google learning style, and you see what is my learning style. There may be surveys, there may be description, and you need to adapt your learning style to the tools that you want to use and leverage on, because that will give you the best efficiency and the best effectiveness. That is the first part. And the second part is cope with failure. Don't be afraid of failure. In Silicon Valley, they say fail quick, fail fast, which we could comment on about later on. But the important thing is see the failure as the most data rich experience that you have to address weaknesses and do better the second time. That is my advice.
Thank you very much, Marco, for your reflection about how to find the right skills and what skills are required to develop a startup. And I want to highlight another concern which happens quite often, that you can find the potential co-founders and work as a team. Everything looks promising at the beginning, and then something goes wrong, and you don't know how to basically handle that validation period and how to make sure that what looks promising at the beginning can also go in the long run. So my also another question to you, Marco, would be how to validate the startup teamwork, how to make sure that what looks promising at the day one can be consistent in the long run and can carry on in order to fundraise, to attract customers, to go together, maybe up to exit or IPO or merge and an acquisition. So it's definitely several years story at least. So how to make sure that teamwork won't fail. And this is actually one of the top three reasons why a startup fail, the problems with teamwork. So I think this is the very essential point to discuss. So maybe you can give a few points on that, how to validate the startup teamwork then.
Thanks a lot. I think this topic is really wide. We could do few episodes of our premiere events, like exactly
Absolutely.
on this topic, because depending on the maturity level of the company. And when I say maturity, I mean the in what part of the cycle, of the life cycle you are. If you are in a corporate world, if you are already in a structured company, the way you validate and you try to prevent issues is with risk management. But admittedly, when you are at a very early stage, you don't actually use these tools. So sometimes actually we end up using the gut feeling. But that is not completely wrong. That is not completely wrong because it's part of the entrepreneurial spirit. Before we were talking about what skills. Now, a fundamental skills that entrepreneurs need to have is to envisage, to have the vision, to imagine how that thing that they want to create, that at the moment is just an embryonic idea, how it will look like when it will be in the real world, in the real life. So this power of creativity, of imagination, and imagine that is fundamental skill for an entrepreneur. One way to validate the work, the teamwork of a startup, is first of all figuring out through the gut feeling, through this power of imagination and creativity, whether we are going in the right direction. But then, of course, there is not only the gut feeling, we should also look support for from matrices. So as soon as possible in our journey, we should set up objectives. We should set up a metric, or how they are called, a KPI. And we should be able to say, okay, how does success look like? We should be able, for example, to have 100 clients in the next 6 months. So, what do we need to do? So, you track back from that overall objective and you start breaking it down in the small actions and tasks that you have to do, you as a team. Of course, if you have people around you, if you're not alone, you will start distributing the workload. You will start saying, okay, I will work on this, I will work on A and B. So there will be a plan. So let's summarize. We started from an overall objective. We break down, we go down to a step by step process done by like micro objectives. These work streams might be applied and assigned to the different people of the team, of course, and those objectives will be used to validate the work, the teamwork of the startup. Because if we have the objective in 6 months to have 100 clients, that might mean, for example, to have the first 50 within 3 months, and so on. And we can break down until when we have these verifiable elements that we can check, and these are objectives, micro objectives that we can use to validate the work of the team. It's not the only tool, but I will pause there because otherwise we overwhelm our audience. But this is one tool: setting up objectives, breaking down the macro objectives, macro goals, and checking whether we do each of those actions. It's like having a shopping list. Let's use very simple analogies. It's like having a shopping list. You want to go for shopping, you write down the shopping list, and once you are there in the shop, you tick the box. Did I pick up this? Yes. Did I pick up this? Yes. That's how it works.
Thank you very much, Marco, for your contribution from mentors' side. And now I would like to ask Vadim, because I think the students of business schools, they are a bit more lucky because they can validate their teamwork during their group work on assignments, during some student activities. So maybe you have your own approach on how to help students and early stage entrepreneurs to validate their teamwork, and maybe you can reflect on how does it work at the University of Wolverhampton, how students engage and how they can validate their teamworks as well.
Thank you, Slava. I have a slightly personal perspective on how you validate teamwork. Uh, having had the leadership positions in Wolverhampton and other universities, when you lead the team, you can get immediate clues if something is not working, if teamwork is not progressing. And as a leader, you asked me before what qualities are quite important. As a leader, you have to have that ability to pick up those signals and to read those signals as early as possible. And those signals are relatively straightforward. People stop engaging in communication. They become silent. They don't speak out. They don't share ideas. So disengagement is quite, a remarkable sign. Or your co-founder, you may find that your co-founder is no longer committed as they have been before. So ability to read those early signs is critical. And to me, this is what validates your teamwork: commitment of team members, their engagement, their willingness to speak out, their willingness to challenge your view as a leader in an open way. So this is kind of my perspective on that. In addition to other elements which we have normally at university when we are validating teamwork. And this is a very established routine for all our modules where students get feedback on their group work, on their project overall. But then we also ask students to reflect on their individual experiences as team members as well.
Thank you, Vadim, for your reflection on that. As I said, it's quite interesting and useful, maybe for entrepreneurs also to make some to reflect on the previous experiences if they had some with the people they aim to work. Let's say if you didn't have a nice experience of group teamwork during your study life, it's probably not gonna happen during your startup work as well. So as you said, Vadim, it's actually very important to track the level of engagement with your co-founders. How do they respond? How do they react to your requests and discussions? And who is that person chasing everybody? Or maybe you have the both directions communication, which is much more likely to happen for successful teamwork. And then, I think it's also quite challenging for this topic to discuss during the COVID time, the post-COVID time, when people struggle also with the pressure of circumstances. So, how would you recommend to differ the lack of engagement to the project and some personal circumstances, maybe which can drop the performance in a startup or a group work or teamwork? How would you kind of differ that factors, lack of interest of particular project and some circumstances which cannot be handled by the person, because that's
Mhm.
what we all experience right now.
So I mean, this is where I would like also to refer to our joint experiences when we were assessing group work in the university, and the answer is relatively straightforward. So the foundations of the successful teamwork are laid down at the very beginning, at the stage of shaping your team. And at this stage, you try to again to partner with those who share your values, your attitude, your approaches, your goals. And if at that stage you expect to partner, you normally do with those with whom you have least disagreement. And so if foundations are laid well, so you wouldn't expect too many troubles ahead. And then trying to answer your question about how would you distinguish between different reasons for disengagement, where so if the foundations lay for the teamwork are robust, and if then you have an issue within the teamwork, I would assume that it might be something else which is in play. It might be related, as you say, to certain personal circumstances, and this is another quality which is quite important to have for any startup owner and leader. The quality, you have to have that high level of emotional intelligence and level of self-awareness, and also you have to be able to sort of to put on shoes of others, if I can express myself like that. This is quite important. So emotional intelligence is critical.
Thank you very much, Vadim, for that discussion. And I think this is, again, the key question, because one of the top three problems why startup fail is simply because they struggle to manage their teamwork, experience, and performance. So today we speak about finding a startup founder and finding a team, how to make sure you can build up the successful startup team and how to make sure it's happening. So I also want to discuss about another thing which is very important for early stage startups. Is not only about finding a co-founder, it's also about finding everybody who can help startups to survive and come through the challenges. So my tricky question would be to Marka now, because again, the Marka is a frequent uh, contributor to our activities, active mentor in the startup world, in multiple accelerators, including our Elegant Accelerator program. So we still get many questions from early stage startups: where to find startup mentor and advisor, how to find the right person, and where first of all to find that person. So Mark, if you can join our discussion, and I think that's the best question to you because you are mentor of startups. So please, can you give us advice?
Yeah, very short answer. Four letters. Here. 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 The accelerators are the best place because there are, it's an ecosystem where startups find each other. They have a mentorship. Sometimes they, depending on how accelerators are organized, as you said, I have the pleasure to collaborate with accelerators that really span from Thailand from one side down to, and I say down, like I should say west, west side until California. And in each of them, there might be a different organization. Some of them tap into universities. Some of them tap into a community of investors. Some of them are actually created from bottom-up experiences, so from previous entrepreneur or current entrepreneurs. But typically, I would say where to find help. Definitely, it would be looking for accelerators. There are plenty of them. Really, there are plenty of them. Each of them has um, can offer different things. Each of them can offer on top of mentorship other perks. Let's say, um, but I would say them. That, in my opinion, is the best shot. Of course, it's important to network. Of course, it's important to attend events. Of course, it's important to talk. Of course, there may be a local university, or there may be, for example, a research group or a company or a university that is specialized in that specific technology or piece of innovation that you are working on, and there might be an excuse, basically an opportunity to network with them. But otherwise, really, accelerators. Start with Google. Um, spend a bit of time by searching these things. You know, that is part of the value that we have to create. Creating partnerships, creating stakeholders. Well, we don't create the stakeholders, we create the links with stakeholders. It's up to us to find and work with the ecosystem around us. I can assure you, it exists. Look, from I've been speaking with startups in South Africa. I've been speaking with startups in Iraq. I've been speaking with startups based in virtually, I wouldn't say any country, maybe not yet, but most of them. There might not be an accelerator in your region, or maybe not even in your country, but you might certainly join some virtual accelerator. And sorry for that. And as long as you're able to interact from the language point of view, I think, nowadays with these technologies, with the internet, with a global community that we are all part of, I would say it's really difficult. I would struggle not to find an accelerator. So there are plenty of opportunities out there. Feel free to ask, but really just go on Google otherwise, and you will find plenty of them. That would be my first attempt, definitely.
Thank you very much, Marka, for your contribution. And as you said, if you're looking for a mentor advisor, just attend the events like this one, engage with the community, and you realize that there are so many people ready and willing to support and help. And Marka, for sure, one of our very super insightful, knowledgeable, and encouraging person to help and support our Entrepreneurs Intelligence Club and other accelerator programs. But equally, what I want to highlight here during our discussion that some entrepreneurs they need more support than others due to some many reasons, due to some challenges they experience due to some disadvantages, and many more things. And I think the Vadim can contribute to that point as well. Maybe Vadim, if you can reflect a bit more about how accelerators can support that disadvantaged groups of entrepreneurs and what's need to be done there to highlight that problem, which is not covered well sometimes.
Thank you, Slava. I do think you raise a very, very important and relevant point. In my view, us academics and entrepreneurship professional mentors need to do much more than we have been currently doing, supporting entrepreneurs or would-be entrepreneurs from disadvantaged communities or racialized communities. We have to acknowledge, that they face tremendous inequalities related to opportunity, which then translate to inequalities related to outcome. They may not have the same access to networks, networks in terms of people, networks in terms of finance. They may not have the same, background in terms of getting top education, and this is where I think we have to do, and go extra mile. And what I'm talking about is not just about entrepreneurial opportunities in general, because there are different types of entrepreneurship. It could be just, necessity entrepreneurship, just to help to survive. This is not a good option. We have to think about how to support more, understand more, and provide more for those who would like to excel in high growth, high value entrepreneurship. And I know, Slava, I think you have been already doing a lot and engaging a lot with different entrepreneurship networks, both in different parts of the world. And I think we, as part of this series, I really encourage to have a special session related to entrepreneurship and opportunities for individuals with multiple intersectional identities.
Well, absolutely, Vadim. I think again you highlight a very important question, and the challenge and potential challenges some entrepreneurs may experience. For sure, the access to some supported facilities for entrepreneurs are different depending on region, the area entrepreneurs based. But what we may say during our virtual facilities and supporting activities we have at Allergen Club and with our network of mentors, academic professionals, community members, we do support everybody who's willing to come and engage with us. So no matter where you're based, what's your backgrounds and country of presence, welcome to join our events, and you get support, especially for those who just about to start this journey. I think this is very important. And thank you, Vadim, for your contribution. And I guess what is important here is that every community member across our network and also our professional experts, they're willing to support everybody, especially those entrepreneurs who experience some challenges and maybe they coming out from some disadvantages groups and some minority groups as well. So please welcome. We are happy to support you. Thank you, Vadim, for that point as well. And we are moving on because we have to cover many other questions equally. So as I said before, if you get any questions about how we can support you, if you're just about to start your startup project, go to allergen.club website. You can see the list of upcoming events. We have special accelerator program for early stage startups, and there are many more facilities available. So please welcome, just take a look at our website and you will find the faces and the people we have today as well. So, and also, I just want to come to a bit more concrete, more practical points we we discussed today, if you find a potential co-founder and you're willing to validate your teamwork. So what I want to discuss with Marka and maybe also with Vadim later on, how to organize your teamwork if you're just about start tomorrow, because a lot of startup founders, they have multiple ideas. They, some of them, they're very nice ones and they have a potential in the market, but the challenge is if you just about start tomorrow, what should I do? So Marka, maybe you can give an advice looking back to your experience working with startups as well, please.
Thanks, Slava. And yes, I think all of us, we are at some point in that position. Okay, where should I start from? I think, in practical terms, assuming that you really want to start tomorrow, first of all, you should have a sort of clear idea. That doesn't mean that that idea will be the final one. You might pivot along the way. If you're not familiar with the concept of pivoting, that happens as an average at 2, 3 times for each entrepreneur. And that is exactly when we start with an idea, then we start learning, we validate the learning. We were talking before about that. And we realize actually, for whatever reason, that there is a different opportunity or some obstacle or some challenge, and we start changing the direction and we redefine our idea in a slightly different way. That is exactly the concept of uh, pivoting. So having a clear idea doesn't mean that we know for sure that that will be the final one that we will bring to life, but we should know where we should start from. I mean, if we want to go traveling, I need to know whether I want to go to I don't know, to Las Vegas, or New York, or Beijing. They are in a completely different direction. So first of all, having some clarity, which you might have on your own or with your team. Once you have clarity, the second step is, okay, what do we need to start bringing to life this idea? What should be the next step? Do I need, and here we go with the, I would say, with two things in parallel. From one side, we should look at the external world, the market. So, okay, we have this idea. Is there a real demand? Let's start interacting with potential customer, clients, stakeholders, whoever they are. Let's start talking with our friends. Hey, what about this? Of course, when I say friends, I mean people who, let's say, are relevant to the idea that you are working on. And from this point of view, you want to actually investigate. You want to start understanding how it works. You want to start collecting piece of information. Let's call it in a more technical way. You start doing your due diligence. And that type of work will also suggest you things to do. Might disclose some challenge. It might disclose some potential partner. You might find some co-founder. You might find somebody had the same idea, and you want to become the best buddies and work together. You never know. So looking at the external world, but at the same time, I think it's very important to look or keep looking, I should say. Both of them are a continuous exercise, by the way. There will be an iteration, okay? It's not a just one exercise, you finish, you complete, and then never done again. So on the other side, you look at the internal world. So let's say your resources, your capabilities. If you want to do a business where it's about, for example, a healthcare, okay, do you understand hospitals? How do they work? So you might want to survey and interview some doctors, but you might want as well to take an article and read how the NHS, assuming that you are in the UK, how the NHS works, so as you can understand better the ecosystem. So I would say is a parallel double work, understanding the what's going on relevantly to your idea in the ecosystem, but also posing the question, okay, do I need any skill? If I want to become a musicist, and I want to play guitar and I don't know how to play guitar, well, I actually should buy a guitar and start playing guitar and should start training myself to play guitar. So that is what I mean about, in very practical terms, looking at the external world, but as well our internal world, ourselves, the team, and our resource and capabilities. I hope that helps, but feel free to ask some follow-up question.
Thank you very much, Marco, for your contribution, and for sure, that's again super essential points to make sure you organize your teamwork in the right way, and it's not sometimes about the people; it's about how you set that right environment to make your team work together. But equally, sometimes something goes wrong, and still there are some challenges. Looking back to your again experience dealing with startups, why do you think sometimes teamwork fail? What are the common patterns maybe you observe, and what's going on why some startups cannot come through this teamwork experience together? Any advice on that, or maybe your reflection?
Look, I could share many stories. I saw so many different things, but I think that the most important one uh, is when we actually build an idea, and it happened to me different times. We build an idea thinking or even being confident that that is a great idea. So, I still, people would tell me, we talk about tech startups, and it happened to me. I go to events or pitch them or whatever. I interact with entrepreneurs, and they say, oh, um, I have an app. Uh, okay, good. Well done. You have an app. Okay. So, oh, yeah, I have an app. Uh, yes, I got that. So, what's going on with it? Are you selling, or it's on commerce? Are you getting money, return on investment? What's going on? Are you selling? Oh, no, no, I have an app. Now I need to understand who I can sell it to, how I can sell. So that is the main problem, the main issue that I see. Thinking, or better, focusing on the products and isolating yourself from the rest of the world, being confident that you are building something exceptionally good for the rest of the humanity. But in all of that, you actually forgot to ask uh, whether people like it. Let me tell a joke. When we were children, I don't know whether it happened to you, but when we were like, I wouldn't say babies, but not even teenagers, but like 7, 8 years old, you see those babies, and they say, hey, yes, I have a girlfriend or a boyfriend. It depends. I have a girlfriend. Okay, and do you mean? No, 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 but she doesn't know. So that's the main story here, that sometimes we develop the relationship, we have a girlfriend, we have the unicorn, we have everything, but the consumer doesn't know whether and we don't know whether they really have the needs. So let's not make like the same mistake of babies. Let's make sure that we ask, let's make sure that we survey, let's make sure that we talk, and that product or service that we are developing is good not only for us. We have a conflict of interest, we love our baby. I typically say to my mentees, don't fall in love with your product or service, with your ideas. So make sure that evaluation, this is a good product, comes from independent people, not from yourself. That would be my main advice. Please do it.
Thank you very much, Marco, for your reflection. And again, thanks a lot for sharing your examples and experience you have during your work with startups. But definitely, I think the Vadim, you also have many observations why startup teams fail and why teamwork doesn't work. So maybe you can give an advice how to define if you really need to stop working together, or there is something you can improve and high up your performance across your team. So where's that moment to define that you need to find another team to work together, or there is something you can improve, or maybe what are the reasons of failure? What's your reflection on that?
Thank you, Slava. Yeah, it's a very tricky question to ask. I would say again, as an expert in innovation as well, what is important for any founder is to give your team a room to be creative or to be crazy in a good sense, to to exchange ideas freely. Again, to the founder to challenge each other. And this is what the data shows. So having that space for interaction is quite important. And having also, if you talk about business functions, giving an equal voice to different business functions. And if we talk about tech startups, and founders know quite well, especially from my experiences, founders with a non-technological background, with social sciences background, have always shared with me their thoughts that, I am under pressure. My R&D people, my engineers tell me to do that. This is the right way. This is how we should enter their market. This is what customers want. So some particular business functions within your team may have disproportionate voice, and this is not good for team. So your role again as a leader to make sure that everybody's voice is heard and listened to, and setting out those rules of the game and following and making sure your team is happy, of course, with those rules and follows them is critical. And what is critical point you're asking me, and what to do at that point? I mean, to be honest, again, to be honest with the team, and another the complication is, of course, if you have an issue with your founder, it might be easier, and this is where again the right decisions have to be made at the very beginning, whether to go as a sole entrepreneur and search for a co-founder, or maybe just wait not to search for a co-founder and just and try to look for employees instead of co-founders. And as you work together with your team, which would consist of employees and chief officers, chief technology officers, chief operation officer, chief financial officer, you will know those people better, and then it will be a natural process towards sharing equity as well. So and when it comes to that, and it is also easy to find way out in those critical points, because you can just fire your chief financial officer, or chief technological officer, and rehire another one, although it's not without trouble. So again, what I would like to reiterate the same point. So laying foundations of your team are quite critical, and making those choices at the beginning of the process are quite critical.
Thank you, Vadim. I think again, that's highlight about being honest and trying to have a very transparent discussion and dialogue with your co-founders is essential parts to understand how to improve teamwork, and how also to make sure that you can stick with these people and work in the long run. But I think there is another big factor I want to highlight, which influenced everybody's performance and every startup during these last 2 years, is that post-COVID time, when we had to make a shift from remote work up to from office work up to remote work, then we getting back to some work desks and office spaces. So there are some benefits and disadvantages for sure for both things, but definitely it gives some challenge to understand what's wrong. Maybe you've been very productive during your virtual teamwork collaboration, then you're meeting up together and you realize it doesn't work well, and another way around, so you can work together in the office space nicely, and then you realize during your virtual teamwork you don't have much engagement, you don't have much productivity and performance. I think, Marco, if you can reflect on that also, how to make sure that your performance doesn't rely much on that shift between the work in the office and also the virtual teamwork collaboration, or how at least to minimize that challenge, especially if you're working from our houses, it may drop too many distractions around our home places. So how to come through these challenges as well when you work as a team, and how to make sure that your performance drop is not related because you're lazy, it's because of some things need to be managed better. So what would you advise to startups on that?
Yeah, that's a another big topic, and I think the keywords there was mentioned by Vladim before. I heard the word empathy, and I think it's very important that we understand that we are all human beings. The shift, it's something that happened to virtually all of us, and we need to cope with it. So I would say, from one side, we need to understand and analyze the what causes that lack of performance. In the first place, there is the need of empathy, there is the need of understanding, and there is the need of a period of adaptation. Of course, period doesn't mean 20 years, otherwise it couldn't work. So beyond empathy and adaptation and understanding, I would say we need to analyze why the performance drops. And it's a matter of the same thing will be done in an office, to be honest with you. You know, we're in a different context, in a different physical space. And we have in each of them, the office or working remotely, we have sources of distractions, sources of concentration. So let's try to understand what makes us distracted from our job, or vice versa, what enables our job. So, what helps us perform better. And this is something that I think personally should be done at personal level, even before than the team level. I mean, from one side, I think that each of you, co-founders and founders of entrepreneurs, needs to understand that you have to put the hat of the leader and the human leader of human beings. So it's important to all what we say so far. But I also will call on the responsibility that each of us has when it comes to performing well, which means basically that um, we need to analyze on our own whether we can perform or not. So, if it makes sense, I think that is a shared responsibility from one side, the team, from the other side, the person, the people themselves. Then, of course, we enter into the more complicated ground of how to check and how to motivate performance. I would say I would pause here and we can discuss further. But in the first place, shared responsibility, understanding, and empathy would be two important ingredients to make it work.
Thank you very much, for Marco, for your reflection on that, and for sure the virtual teamwork or office work, for sure they may have some the same challenges why some teamwork doesn't work. It may be not only related to the environment, and I think especially the reason why, because there is another big layer which may cause some challenges during the teamwork. It's a cross-cultural specific and international team collaboration where you have uh, startup co-founders from different backgrounds, different nationalities, and living from different spaces, especially if you speak about some virtual teams. So how would you advise on managing these cross-cultural differences, and how it may bring some challenges, and how to make sure that your team is not experiencing that? Because what can be polite and nice for some cultures maybe may sound a bit arrogant, especially during the communication discussions in the team, during some correspondence. So how would you advise to understand that that's actually not causing some dramatic issues in your teamwork?
Yeah, that's another important point. And actually, you said, does he affect, does he have an impact? Oh, for sure. There is no doubt. There is plenty of experience there is that we have on a daily basis if we ever worked with international colleagues. For example, I develop projects around the world, and when I interacted with people in Chile, is completely different from when I interact from people in the north of Africa, and it's completely different from when I interact with people in the Nordics, and it's still completely different from when I interact with my colleagues and clients in Vietnam. So that again is one of the things like COVID that we cannot neglect. So first of all, definitely it has a huge impact, and you said it very well. Culture, in particular way, when we develop a project or when we have this interaction between different cultures for teamwork, in this case, as it can have actually a huge impact. Some elements is actually that it makes a bit maybe there is fun, maybe there is a bit of learning experience, but the reality is that unless we understand what's going on the other side, they can be very detrimental. So how can we understand? Well, the best way is to be willing to listen, be willing to explore. I would say abandon the rigidity sometimes that we have. And we have to be quite straightforward on this. Sometimes we say, okay, we do, and that's the best way to do. Well, there are different ways. There are here and here. We have an audience, a different entrepreneurs, and possibly if we ask a question on how you sort out an issue, we will receive different answers. Is there a right or wrong? No, most likely there are different ways, and we look for the best way to do depending on a variety of factors. So, likewise, we talked here about, or before, sorry, about empathy. Working with different cultures requires us making the effort to understand. And we can do it practically. We can go on Google and blog. There is a World of Cultures. There is a website actually that I was looking for my own project. And I was looking for it and I was saying, oh, I was reading a book about strategy and international strategies. And it was mentioning this website. So we need to dedicate a bit of time and effort in looking for material, some source, just to have a grasp, I would say. If we have friends, if we are lucky enough to live in a place, in an environment, or if we have any contact through the accelerator, for example, that comes from a different culture, and say, hey, how does this work? Does it make sense? I remember, just to let me close with a short story. Um, I remember that I short lived for a few months in Ecuador, in South America, and I went through, of course, a learning experience because the culture was different. I would speak Spanish over there, and I would see and witness and experience things that might not be exactly what I was doing before in other countries where I've been living. And I remember once we went with a friend of mine on the beach. We went out, and I said, "Hey, Carlos, I would like to ask you a question." And I will never forget. He looked at me and he said, "Marco, this is the right time. We are alone, just the two of us. Ask me anything that you still didn't get through so far. I will explain everything." So, of course, that it was not a joke. This really happened, the story. And you see, sometimes we need to make this effort. We need to find those people that can help us, and we need to ask. We need to be willing to ask questions. We need to be willing to doubt our confident self who would dictate that the solution is A or B, or the best way forward is A or B. So let's be curious. Let's be empathetic. Let's be open and understanding. And let's make it this into a joke. Sorry, not into a joke, but in a joyful experience to learn more about different cultures. We will learn a lot, and it will be great experience. I can assure that. As a person who has been living abroad in many countries, that's a fun game to do.
Thank you very much, Marka, for your reflection on cross-cultural challenges which can influence your teamwork performance during your startup work. And now I would like to ask Vadim, because Vadim, I guess the student environment is really cross-cultural, very international, and gives some also maybe some advantages to understand the different cultures better and implement that during the teamwork. But equally, it may bring some challenges. So maybe you can reflect on that observations, how cross-cultural differences influence in teamwork during the student life, but equally for startup performance.
Absolutely, absolutely, Slava. university environment is ideal to observe intercultural differences and challenges associated with that. And what you can see again, and I think we did it together when you participated in our entrepreneurship modules, you can see that sometimes students are looking for comfort zone. They sometimes want to pair, to partner with peers coming from the same culture, or speaking the same, the same language or native language. And again, there is nothing wrong with that. But what is important to probably to explain, referring to research and evidence from successful entrepreneurial cases, that it is diverse teams which are normally more successful. They are more creative, they are more innovative, and as a result, they come up with better solutions, with better services, with better products, and high profits. So, although it is challenging to reconcile different cultural attitudes, it is really worth that effort. That effort will pay off, and pay off. It will pay off, dramatically. So my advice, do not hide. Do not hide from those cultural differences. Turn, lemons to lemon juice. Turn those challenges to your advantages and profits.
Thank you very much, Vadim, for your reflection. And as you mentioned before, the student experience may help you to come through these cross-cultural differences, knowledge, which you definitely can benefit in building up the stronger international team in a startup. But for sure, it's tough sometimes because you need to learn and observe and be ready to be flexible enough to accept some cultural differences as well. But equally, we coming through the multiple challenges as cross-cultural differences shift from between the office work and remote work. And I think what we also need to highlight that this particular time of last 2 years gave us a lot of pressure regarding our well-being and mental health issues, because we stressed, we exhausted, we have some uncertainty in many different directions. So my question to you, Vadim, would be, and I guess some students also sending you messages and asking for advice as well, how to manage this level of stress, and if you're exhausted, and how to come through this during your student work, during your academic work, and definitely the startup journey work. So maybe you can give an advice, your personal opinion on that, or maybe again your observation on how some other successful entrepreneurs coming through these challenges successfully.
The last couple of years were absolutely remarkable, and I think it is quite clear to everybody that the nature of workplace has changed dramatically. So there is no way back to conventional ways of organizing your work. It has to be hybrid, whether we talk about startup, whether we talk about large enterprise, multinational corporation, or university, or public sector organization. We have to think, and we have to factor in hybrid way of working, and we have to make it work. And definitely, what is also clear from the last 2 year experiences, that extremes are not working. And being at home only, or being in office only, probably again is not a good solution. And this is where we have to listen to ourselves, and to show that empathy. As CEOs, as founders, we need to understand our people and their priorities, their mental setup. Some of us are extroverts, some of us are introverts, some are comfortable in both worlds. So we have to accommodate both. But I would say again, from the creative and from the creativity point of view, from the innovation point of view, it is quite critical to provide that space for exchange, for interaction, and physical space is also quite important. So what we are losing currently with internet meetings, I enjoy these meetings very much, but what we may be missing is a tacit element and tacit learning, tacit uh, interchange when we can learn by doing things together. So this is quite important. At the same time, there are many advantages to this type of work. As we can see, there is no way that we could have brought together people from all over the world, from Australia, from United States, from Mexico, from Africa. So there is no way we could have brought in a physical environment investors and mentors and founders at the same time without significant cost, financial and organizational. So this is my answer. If we talk about stress and mental health, advice is straightforward, and this is where your team and your co-founder could be quite, again, very critical. Is for your co-founder to say, look, my friend, I think you burnt out. Take a break. Forget about the work. I will cover for you, and then come back re-energized, and it will be um, only one way, upwards and onwards. So this is how we should approach. We should listen to to ourselves. And it is, again, whatever environment we talk, whether it's business environment, whether it's student environment.
Absolutely, Vadim. I think this is again very essential discussion, and I think very influencing factor which can bring some performance drop. And we need to be very honest again with ourselves. And you're absolutely right that sometimes we also need to take care about some other founders and people across our team, to be ready to come to them and say, you need to get rest, you work too hard, you need to come through this some kind of the rest time. But I think the challenge is not only to come to some people, but also to be able to keep that motivation level high across the team. And now I would like to ask Mark, maybe you can come to our discussion and share your opinion on how to keep the motivation high for founders to be able to motivate the rest of the team. And maybe you can give an advice how to make it happen, if there are some any practices or maybe the tools or techniques you can suggest in order to make sure that performance of your company is not getting dropped simply because you're not capable to deliver that motivation, energy, and that vibe to the team to come through these challenging times together. So maybe you can come to our discussion. What would you say?
Yes, Lava, thanks. Again, another very interesting and complex topic. There is plenty of research about that, and I will not go into it, but they talk about intrinsic motivation, and there is a clear trend, a clear view from all the people who studied the subject, or at least the vast majority. You see, we think at the beginning that we find motivation from money, from social media, from visibility, but then in one way or another, we still feel that we miss something. And that is where what they call the intrinsic motivation comes and has a role. The real motivation comes from having a purpose, The real motivation comes from knowing that you are working toward a vision, that you are working for something good, for something that really you are passionate about. And one practical way, for example, to motivate your team is actually to use a good amount of communication to make sure that they are aware of how they are contributing. So, for example, if you are doing a code or piece of coding that it's used for an app and that app is used for helping children, I don't know, I'm just simulating here. One way to do it is okay, from 8 to 9, you have to build this piece of the code. From 9 to 10, you have to deliver this piece of the code. That's a very, very practical. It's important, of course, that we know what are the deadlines and whatever, but I think it's much more important that we communicate with our team or teams, whether they are in the office, whether they are remote, we can do online, and like in this moment, and we motivate them by make them feel part of the big things that we are creating. So clarity in communication, no micromanagement, but giving ownership of their task. This is another aspect of motivating them, and communication to make them feel part of what we are doing all together. And sometimes communication is very difficult. It's very difficult for a variety of reasons. We feel the need and the priority to look for money, so we communicate very well because we are forced to. We communicate very well with investors. Then we want to have the right items or goods that we need, maybe depending on what we do. So we feel the need to communicate very well with the suppliers, and then we need to apply for the accelerator and the manager, so we need to talk very clearly with Slava because he is the manager of the accelerator. But do we stop a moment and we think about the most important asset? Do we ever wonder whether we are communicating well and enough? There are two things: well and enough, quality and quantity, with our team. So that would be one of the ways. And again, I will pause here. There are different things, but it's better to say one thing that we can think of and we can remember, rather than overwhelming and putting together a lot of stuff that would be a little bit of a fruit salad that we don't digest very well. So let's communicate with our team. Let's make this effort. Let's engage with them. Let's spend time with them. That's my advice.
Thank you very much, Marco, for your reflection on how to keep the teamwork motivation high and the importance of having enough communication and also the right communication in order to making sure every team member understand well your objectives, your reasons you're doing some particular projects, and that everyone is on the same page. You're absolutely right, and I need to cover another question, which is quite tough and challenging because we speak today about the remote and office challenges, some cross-cultural differences, some well-being and mental health issues depend because of the time and the challenging experience we have all now. But there is another thing I want to highlight, and maybe Vadim can join our discussion. It's not always that we still can stay with our teamwork, and some founders or maybe some members of team should leave, or they want to leave the company or the startup. So my question: how to make an exit from your team, maybe from your startup, and make sure that there is a polite way, because this is very important to probably keep your relationship in the right way, even you kind of leaving your startup team. So maybe you can give advice in your reflection on how to exit and what founders should remember when they're trying to finish the project or leave team, or they just kind of don't feel that they aim to continue that journey with someone. So what would you advise on that, because this is very sensitive and challenging question, I guess.
Indeed. I would. I mean, it's a very challenging question, and it's very specific to particular case, and it depends who decides to leave, the founding member or co-founding, or just one of the executive offices, there, although it is very case specific, I would assume that there is a commonality. You have to be honest with your team, with your colleagues about your motivation to leave, and that motivation could be very much benign. It could be related to family circumstances. It could be related to reevaluating your professional goals. It could be related to that you have earned enough money and just you want to retire and spend some nice time in a nice location. So it is quite important to initiate a very frank conversation with your colleagues, and as you say, to remain friends, and also remain that human connection after you leave, because I think it's quite important to give a signal to your team and colleagues. Although I'm leaving, I would be there for you. I would be there for you to support you with advice and with my knowledge, with my expertise, and with my networks. Not all divorces are like that, but I would assume that would be the most productive strategy for exit. Or which, I mean, another scenario which I do not allow it entirely, think about exit strategy together. If your reason, again, you have to be quite clear, you think this company is going to be bust, right? If that is the reason, if you think it is a failure is imminent, you have to have that frank discussion and think about collective strategy, not your individual strategy for exit, and you have to think how to make sure that everybody comes out of this situation with minimum damage.
Thank you very much, Vadim, for your reflection. Again, staying as a human and also keep the relationship, I think, is a key, no matter, because you can probably recover your teamwork in the future. So it's essential to keep that option and opportunity to stay friends and to make sure you can recover your business relationship. But now I would like to ask Marco, because Marco, you definitely saw so many failure stories and the dropped startups when they were about to finish their business. So how would you advise to remember about this exit option, and what would you recommend to startup founders to remember before they want to exit? How to make sure you make it in the right way? Maybe you can give an advice.
Yeah, I went through actually, and I experienced it firsthand with a startup where they had a problem and they had to split up, and it was a chaotic situation that we put lawyers in the middle. So yes, I lived the situation very much uh, close. I think what Vladimir said about the relationships, life life happens. Life happens while we there was a saying that goes in this way: life is something that happens while we are busy doing something else. And it can happen that in life we need to leave, we need to change, we are forced to change. There are things that are not under our control. uh, what you should remember, if you're the one to exit, I think it's important to understand that you are leaving a group of people that was relying on you. That means that there were some expectations on your contribution. So I would say that this is something to remember. Before Vladimir was saying in one of the questions, put yourself in the shoes of the other person. I think that is the best advice. Try to think the missing parts, the hole that you will create, the gap, the hole, meaning if you go away. So relationship are important. Understanding that there were expectations and trying to see from the other people's point of view in order to make sure that you can smooth out this process. um, and it depends on the situation. It would also be important to understand why you are living, because as I said before, there are things that we cannot control in life. And if this is the case, it should be helpful to explain and be open and transparent rather than just taking excuse. I would say that being upfront and foreseeing the issues and communicating as soon as possible. And here we go back to the communication, the importance of communication from another angle. So we talk about communication again, but from another point of view, for another application, I would say that would definitely help. So yes, understanding the other people expectation, taking care of relationship, and making sure that we communicate as much as possible. That would be my one of my advices.
Thank you very much, Mark. A tough question we highlight today. So maybe, Vadim, you also can reflect a few words on that, because the exit strategy is a very essential part, and it's not always the pleasant process. But we covered today multiple points about cross-cultural differences, the challenge to find mentor, advisor, to validate the teamwork, and many more. So maybe, Vadim, you can give some a little reflection on the outcome of today's discussion, and maybe a few advices to remember in overall to our future startup founders and entrepreneurs, how to find a co-founder, how to find the right team, and make sure that you actually able to make it your product development happen and bring it to the market, because the teamwork is not only essential at early stage but also at scale and growth stage, when you simply don't maybe have time, enough time to manage all of these questions. So the earlier you validate your teamwork, the better. Otherwise, you ending up in the very challenging time, because you already have some commitments with customers, with your partners, with investors, some other people relying on you. So maybe you can give an overall top three advice on how to find the right people to work with and how to come through all of these challenges, if any summary points you can give to our audience, please.
Thank you, Slava. I really enjoyed this session, first of all, and as much as I contributed to this session, I have also learned a lot from this discussion. And if I try to summarize what I have learned, uh, I would say that if I am a founder, I would probably go as a solo founder. If and then, I would make my decision whether to invite co-founders only after I have learned about colleagues who are working for me in responsible positions, whether they chief marketing officers, financial officers, etc. So second thing, yeah, laying the foundation of your team is quite critical. So I would spend time and effort to recruit the team I need. I would also spend some time thinking what kind of organizational functions I need to bring to my team, because there are certain functions which are really essential for my value proposition, for making my offering difficult to replicate, something which we talked about last time around, something which is very critical for my competitiveness. So I would bring those functions to get in-house, and I would probably outsource those which I don't need. I mean, which are not very critical and which are not related to my core competitive value proposition. And if I decide, if I see that my enterprise, unfortunately, is not going to succeed, I would find a way to be honest with the team, and I would find and I would keep relationships, because what matters is people. It may not be the fault of the team. It could be entirely external circumstance, and we have many examples, especially this time during COVID crisis, many sectors, but in particular sectors specifically, yeah, like in tourism and hospitality, for instance, just to pick up a few. And this is quite important to find that respectable exit strategy. And remember that business world is a tiny world. So what matters is your reputation. You don't want to put on yourself a claim as a nasty person, a nasty founder. So you may be in trouble later on, finding investors and business angels.
Absolutely, Vadim. Thanks a lot for that summary points for those who just about to start looking for a co-founder or just basically looking for some team to work with. And I liked your safe approach about trying to be solo and then to see what kind of need do you have as a founder. Do you need more resources and more skills and more um, basically hands to manage your startup, but equally also to make sure you have your own solo experience to come through this and see how it works. But Marco probably has some another add-on to that reflection. Marco, you observed so many examples of successful teamwork experiences, but equally not so successful. So maybe you can give your summary reflection on what we did we learn today, and also what comes from your background working with startups. Please, Mark, if you can join us and give your final points to our audience.
Sure. First of all, thank you for sharing this hour or 2 hours with us. It was great. I hope that each of you, found it useful and found some good food for thought, I would say. And thanks, of course, to Slava and to the whole team behind Slava who organized this extraordinary, well organized events. Hat off to all of you. Really, hat off to all of you. That is an example of how the team works. Without a team, this could never happen. So that is a great example. We practice what we preach. Actually, you practice what you preach. And in terms of the most important things, I would like to close by reminding some key words. First of all, team. The team is the most important asset. Most important than the money. Most important than the product itself. Absolutely. The team is the most important asset. Try to reflect on this and keep it in mind. Second point, despite the fact that the team is the most important element and asset of your startup, you don't need to be in a rush. It's not a matter of just collecting pieces like stones from the beach or from the river. Take your time, they will come along. Make sure that there is a high quality. Aim to quality and the right match. So start your journey and they will arrive if this is the case, if this is the what will be important for your journey as an entrepreneur. And the other two things that we mentioned maybe in the second part, remember the importance of communicating. As a CEO, as a founder, you need to be a good communicator. So don't put off, just start trying now. Communicate with your team. Communicate well, communicate enough. Make sure that you talk with them, that you engage with them. But at the same time, remember that communication is a two-way approach. So you communicate, but also make sure that you don't, sorry, that you listen to them. Make sure that you spend time to listen what they want, what they are motivated by, what is their purpose, what do they care about. Make sure that you spend time communicating and listening. Remember, people who don't and leaders who don't listen soon or later, and I would say soon rather than later, will be surrounded by people who are not interested in talking and communicating and working with them. So communicate and listen. I think this is a bit of a magic formula, at least one of the main ingredients. It's not the whole formula to make the teamwork a successful one. So Well done for the work that you have done so far. Thanks for joining us. And hopefully, I'm sure and I hope it was a good investment of your time. And see you to the next event. Remember, communicate and listen.
Thank you very much, Marka, for your contribution, and thank you very much, Vadim, for joining us tonight. That was reflection from Marka Poliafika, our startup mentor, Intelligent Club, and Accelerator program. We talked today about finding the right team, finding a co-founder, and how to come through all of these challenges. And one of the points, Marka, you mentioned is that it's really takes a while to validate your teamwork, and I think that's today's session is one of examples of consistency we have since the time we met first time with you and Vadim and other contributors during our discussion. So first of all, thank you very much for your contributions, your ongoing work with our community members, our startups and tech entrepreneurs. And as Vadim mentioned before, we really willing to support everybody who is really curious and looking for support, no matter where you are based and what kind of need you have, because we have all the facilities to support early stage startup founders to bring their startup projects live. So, Marga, thank you very much, and Vadim, thank you very much for joining us. So today we had that amazing discussion, which I'm extremely pleased to run. And yes, that was our second session about finding a co-founder and building up the team for a startup. This was our second session related to our upcoming book called How to Build a Tech Startup from Concept to International Market. We aim to premiere this year. So if you're looking for more knowledge and more advice on how to come through all of these challenges, please come to our upcoming events next week. On Wednesday, we have new session focused on building up the startup product. So 9th of February, it's going to be next Wednesday. Please join us at 6 p.m. London time. How to build a startup product, that will be the focus of our session with the book contributors, startup experts, and special guests and startup founders for sure. So please stay with us. You also can ask any question via email info@elegant.club. In case you have any questions, more than welcome. You also can take a look at more information about our book project, How to Build a Tech Startup, howtobuildatechstartup.com, where you can see all the faces of contributors, the story about the book, and how this book may help you to build up successful startup journey. Equally, you can see more information about Elegant Club, elegant.club, to see more facilities, more support, and upcoming activities for startup founders and entrepreneurs for sure. We will see you next week. It's a very exciting time because we run 12 events related to the book, and that was related to our second chapter, how to find a co-founder and build up a startup team. Next week, we speak about the product development of a startup. We will have a special pitch presented by a startup. So more than welcome to join us. Thank you very much for watching us. For those who didn't stay online, you can see the link in recording via YouTube and LinkedIn Live. So thank you very much one more time, and looking forward to see you next week. I'm just finishing this session today, and see you next week. Stay tuned.